everyone. It's an honor to be presenting at the Techno Conference on this Women's Day. Today, I'm here to talk about a topic that, when learned and applied effectively, can not only make us better professionals, but also a better human being. And who doesn't want that, right? So, for today's session, let's begin with understanding what is feedback and the need for it. We learn on how to design feedback effectively. I will try to bring all the concepts to life by sharing a blueprint for feedback. And as a proud Netflixer, I would love to share how feedback is core for us. Let's find out what it takes to make feedback a success. In the end, I would like to leave all of you as able leaders. Let us start with getting to know your speaker for today. I am Mahima Sharma, the pronouncer she, her, hers, a global HR professional with career spanning more than a decade in multiple industries and facets of HR. My passion is centered around leveraging technology, research, and data to build usable, relevant, and scalable HR solutions for business. In my current role as an HR business partner at Netflix, I am supporting and driving the strategic initiatives for the finance and operations organization. I am a proud Cornell ILR alumni and a certified coach. So, what is feedback? Feedback is an event that occurs when the output of a system is used as the input back into the system as a part of chain of cause and effect. It is one of the most powerful influences on learning and achievement. But this impact can be both positive or negative. Now that we understand what is feedback, let us learn the importance of it through opportunities and obstacles to provide and receive feedback. Let's start with the positive in terms of opportunities. Feedback encourages employees to feel engaged. McKinsey stated workers who feel engaged with their employers are 20 to 25% more effective in the workplace. And according to Gallup, employees who feel engaged are 27% more likely to self report excellent performance. Teams with high engagement rates are 21% more productive. Turnover. Turnover can be expensive, as expensive as 33% of talent's salary. A feedback culture can help address the concern of turnover by encouraging employees to feel they're learning and developing in the organization through developmental feedback. Feedback encourages clear communication and in turn helps to build positive and transparent workplace. According to Fast Company, employees in a positive workplace are 12% more productive. And according to the University of Warwick, employees who feel that they work in a negative workplace are 10% less effective. Team effectiveness. Theoretically, when a team is able to identify all of their strengths and weaknesses as individuals and as a team, they have the knowledge and motivation necessary to make changes and improvements. And as I mentioned earlier, teams with high engagement rates are 21% more productive. What can be the obstacles to successful feedback? Who is the provider? If you, as a provider, don't know the receiver of the feedback very well, the feedback shared will mostly be positive and not be very specific. Now, which may or may not be effective. Also, the expertise of the provider of feedback and their understanding of the assessment may or may not be similar, which in turn can lead to inconsistent feedback expectations. For example, my idea of leadership can be very different than your idea of leadership. Thus, it is very critical to make sure we have a common understanding of the parameters of feedback while providing and receiving feedback. Weakness focused. As learners, we humans grow more in our areas of strength as compared to the areas of opportunities. So, focusing people on their shortcomings or gaps does not enable learning. In fact, it impairs it. Excellence in any endeavor is almost impossible to define, and yet getting there for each of us is relatively easy. Each person's version of it is uniquely shaped and is an expression of that person's individuality. Designing effective feedback is half the job done. This slide will focus on that part which is crucial to the success of feedback. How do we provide it? So, the main purpose of feedback is to reduce discrepancies between current understandings, performance, and a goal. Effective feedback must answer three major questions. Where am I going? So, what are the goals? How am I going? What progress is being made toward the goal? And where to next? So, what activities need to be undertaken to make better progress? These questions correspond to notions of feed up, feedback, and feed forward. Feed up. What are the goals? Defining the goals and setting the criteria for the goals. These levels of attainment we have termed as success criteria. This allows employees to set further appropriately challenging goals as the previous ones are attained, which helps them with ongoing learning. Feedback. With this, the provider of feedback provides information relative to a task, performance, goal, often in relation to some expected standard to prior performance and or to success or failure on a specific part of the task. Feedback is effective when it consists of information about progress and or about how to proceed. And we will learn more about this in the next few slides. Feed forward. This is a term first coined by Marshall Goldsmith, which when focuses on past events, which is feedback, whereas feed forward focuses on possibilities for the future. The idea is that an individual cannot change their past behavior, but they can modify their behavior going forward. And that is what is empowering about feedback. The model used here on this slide is to address four issues about feedback. First, feedback can be about a task or a product or an outcome, such as whether work is correct or incorrect. This level of feedback may include directions to acquire more, different, or correct information. Second, feedback can be aimed at the process to complete a task. This kind of feedback is more directly aimed at the processing of information or learning processes requiring understanding or completing the task. Third, feedback can be focused at the self regulation level, including greater skill in self evaluation or confidence to engage further on a task. And the fourth is personal, in the sense that it is directed to the self, which is too often unrelated to the performance on the task. This slide will help to make it all real in terms of all that you've heard about feedback and all the concepts that I shared. So, what are different types of flows of feedback? There are broadly three types, starting with peer to peer feedback. This type of feedback relies on your co-workers. Peer feedback comes at the advantage of getting immediate feedback insights from colleagues that are working closely with you. They're aware of your day to day work. Customer. This type of feedback is from somebody who is consuming the output that you're creating at work. It helps you get insights from people that you work with and gather feedback from all your external customers to sharpen your behavior. Third, employee. It's the process of receiving feedback from managers or leadership on your work performance. There can also be a combination of the others that I mentioned: peer, customer, and leader feedback. Most times, this type of feedback from leadership creates a high level of visibility, which can lead to promotions, bonuses, and recognition within your team. Now, let's explore the quality of feedback, what to expect in the workplace. While there are many feedback qualities, we'll be focusing on three for today: constructive, positive, and negative. Constructive is getting straight to the point. Constructive feedback focuses on observations as opposed to giving praise or positive statements. The feedback is solely centered on providing numbers, trends, data, and facts to determine the professional's overall performance. Positive. This type of feedback is often heard the most in workplace. The quality of this feedback consists of praise, appreciation, and positive remarks. Professionals, after receiving positive feedback, tend to feel motivated. Third, negative. There is no feedback such as negative feedback. The issue of negative feedback lies in the delivery of feedback. It points out mistakes, asserts use statements, and criticizes the professionals. It's ineffective and can leave professionals feeling discouraged and attacked. You would have heard it a few times. What you say is not as important as how you say it. With that, when you have a more structured and traditional mechanism of feedback, we call it formal feedback. An example can be your performance reviews, the yearly annual reviews that you have at work. Informal feedback, also known as impromptu feedback, can happen spontaneously. It happens in the spur of the moment and in casual settings, and it does not allow or follow a set schedule with structure. Now, while each tone has its advantages and disadvantages, you should expect to see both in the workplace. Next important piece of feedback is how it is delivered. Face to face feedback can be given in person or on a call, but always happens with the giver and receiver in conversation. Studies show that feedback can be most effective given in the moment, but it is not always feasible, particularly given the new normal of remote teams. Asynchronous feedback is feedback sent in a message or note that the receiver receives for a later time. An example of it can be email or the Slack channels that we use. Now let's start with understanding types of feedback. Directive feedback. It tells someone what to do, even if it's in a positive way. For an example, I recommend you connecting regularly with your team to learn their sentiments about work. The second one is contingency feedback. It gives you a future consequence. If you continue to not participate in meetings, people will stop inviting you. That's an example. Attribution feedback. Feedback describes someone or their actions in terms of a quality or label. For example, you're a good communicator. That's an attribute for the feedback. Next is impact feedback. On the other hand, this type of feedback informs the receiver about the effect their actions have had on people or on the organization. Impact feedback is Important in performance reviews because it can shed light on something your direct report never knew or thought about. It gets at why their behaviors are either working or not working. An example of impact feedback is team members were confused and I felt frustrated. So now let me explain this slide with an example to get it all together and to make it real to you. So for example, I will ask you all for feedback on my presentation today. I would like to consider all of you as my peers. So to encourage me, maybe you would like to provide me constructive feedback. And since this is impromptu, this will be informal. And given this new world, this will most likely be asynchronous. Now, if you provide me feedback regarding slowing my pace of speech, it will be a directive feedback since it denotes an action. For example, if your feedback is for me to have fewer slides so that I have more time for questions, that will be contingent feedback as it gives an action and is outcome dependent on the feedback. If the feedback is simply that I'm a good speaker, it will be an attribute feedback as it highlights the quality associated with it. And then finally, if the feedback is Mahima, you should continue to do these presentations as it will not only help you build a personal brand but also Netflix. This can be impactful feedback as it helps me learn about how I contribute in building the organization. Netflix. Netflix is very well known for the success story for leveraging feedback. Feedback at Netflix is not a one off activity, it is something that ties into everything we do. This is a culture which is very different from what I have seen at any other organization. Feedback is core to our culture. It is one of the key pillars of how we work, lead, relate, and succeed at Netflix. It ties into our values, especially courage, and we are very explicit about it in our culture deck. Feedback underscores how we do things around here. Our culture document clearly states how, as an organization, we believe we will learn faster and be better. We can make giving and receiving feedback less stressful and a more normal part of work life. Feedback helps us to avoid sustained misunderstandings and the need for rules. We actively help employees learn how to do this at Netflix through coaching and modeling behaviors we want to see in every employee, which is very, very critical to us. So, here are some tips for the success. Define the need. Why do you or your organization believe in feedback? What are you trying to achieve by setting up the feedback process? Taking the employees on the journey is very critical for them to feel accountable and for them to participate effectively. Growth mindset. That should be the base of it all. Encourage a growth mindset by emphasizing employee training and continuous learning and providing employees with everything they need to expand their skill sets and capabilities. Feedback being an integral part of their learning journey. Feedback takes time, energy, and effort. And make sure that you say thank you. Listen, don't give excuses. Move toward consistency. A continuous feedback process is critical to a good workplace feedback culture. This regular Helpful feedback helps reinforce the importance of a feedback culture in your employees. And as they continue to give each other feedback, they will become more and more comfortable with the process. It will start to feel more natural and focus on collaboration and problem solving. If you were misunderstood while receiving or providing feedback, ask first. Ask if you can provide more context. That will come across as less defensive. The intention of providing feedback both for employees and the organization is to have positive outcomes. With a focus on strengths, it will not only help you bring positivity to employees, but also to the organization. When leaders identify and concentrate on well articulated strengths in the given context, employees will likely view their managers as resources that bring motivation, success, and life into the workplace. Second is the ability to develop awareness and competencies for assessing strengths before putting them into practice. The more we infuse these into our daily routines, the faster it soaks into the workplace culture. Following all the points mentioned above, feedback would not be a separate process that needs to be followed. It will become a part of how we operate, and that's the aim of the exercise. On this Women's Day, I want to leave you all with the last thought. I know studies show how we as women are 20% less likely to receive actionable feedback, which in turn can contribute to our performance and growth at work. So today, I want to leave you all as able leaders. The first step is to be aware, aware of the bias. Identifying and learning about the differences in the feedback received and provided is our first step in the right direction. Be bold. Be bold in being curious. That is key. Ask till you understand that feedback. Ask questions about the feedback or ask for clarity till you completely understand the feedback that is provided. Lead. Lead the feedback discussions. Take charge. And lastly, exact. Next time you have a feedback discussion, ask for exact impact and actionable feedback. With this, in the feedback world, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Thank you so much for your time today. Please feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn and or my email address provided here. Thank you.